It. Please click to subscribe. I really appreciate all the support. Today is Thursday. It is now day 68 since Nancy Guthrie literally just vanished from her home in Tucson, Arizona. So many of you have asked me more about the DNA, what could be happening behind the scenes with the DNA testing. Remember, there was DNA found inside Nancy's home that investigators said did not belong to Nancy or anyone in her family or her inner circle, which was a good thing. I mean, it could belong to the suspect. The problem is, as you know, if you've been following the case, the DNA is mixed, and it seems they're having problems sorting that out behind the scenes. In this episode, you're going to hear from a renowned DNA expert and genealogist, CeCe Moore, and she has some really interesting things to say about what could be happening to try to sort out this DNA issue. First of all, why she believes they should be going back to the crime scene, even now, even after the crime scene has been cleared, and what they should be doing there. She explains that. She also talks about this new machine that is coming out next year. And I know next year seems like a long way away, but these DNA technologies advance so quickly. She explains how this new machine could really help with this DNA issue that she suspects is happening behind the scenes with the Nancy Guthrie case. She also talks about why she would urge Savannah Guthrie to...
Something is hidden in that house, and investigators may have already walked right past it. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. Tucson, Arizona still has no answers. And right now, behind closed doors, a race is happening that most people have absolutely no idea about. A race to crack open a piece of evidence so complex, so tangled, that it may require technology that does not even fully exist yet.
What do you think? What do you think is going on?
I think that companies or a company that was planning to release a new mixture deconvolution software package has probably rushed that. You know how companies, especially tech companies, have a plan for the next year or so. They say, oh, we're going to do that third quarter next year. I suspect that has been moved up to right now. And it's very possible that they are testing out different algorithms at the moment to see if they can deconvolute that complex mixture. I fear that it's the only thing they may have to work with right now. I'm hoping that they are testing additional items from Nancy's home. That can take quite a while if you've collected dozens or hundreds of swabs or other materials, because as I've said, I can't believe there wouldn't be his DNA or their DNA at that crime scene.
Explain to me what you mean by that. So you think there's a company that had some kind of new technology that was going to come out, that because the Nancy Guthrie case is so high visibility, they would be moving that up? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's my educated guess based on what the sheriff has said. He said something about how, they were rushing this. He didn't say what it was, but that is my guess, because deconvolution is a huge part of forensic DNA analysis. And there have been, efforts to deconvolute on the STR side for decades. And they have a lot of software packages that they can work with. But we've only been using SNP testing for forensic samples since around 2018. And that means that it is lagging behind. It wouldn't be able to use the same types of software packages. At Parabon, our bioinformatics scientists are really amazing with deconvolution. But they are sort of leading the pack there. And I think there are a lot of efforts to be able to improve our ability, because we run into that so often with sexual assaults or
And today, one of the most respected DNA minds in the entire country just revealed something that changes the direction of this entire investigation. If you have been following this case, you already know there is a DNA problem. Mixed DNA was recovered inside Nancy's home. DNA that does not belong to her, does not belong to her family, does not belong to anyone in her inner circle. That sounds like a breakthrough, right? Except here's the problem. It is so tangled, so layered with multiple contributors, that investigators are struggling to pull a clean profile out of it. And without that clean profile, they cannot run it. They cannot identify the perpetrator. The case stalls. But here's what just came out. And this is where things get very, very interesting. If you have not subscribed yet, hit that button right now, because this case is moving and you do not want to miss a single update. Hit subscribe and stay with me. There is a company, possibly more than one, that had a new software package in development. Something designed specifically to do what investigators desperately need done right now. They call it deconvolution, breaking apart a mixed DNA sample and extracting individual profiles from the noise. This technology was on schedule for release sometime next year. But the moment this case exploded into national headlines, that timeline may have been pushed forward, rushed. Because what better proving ground exists than the most high-profile missing persons case in America right now? Think about what that means. There are scientists working overtime right now, not because someone told them to, but because Nancy Guthrie's case is the one that finally lit the fire. Now pay attention here, because this is where it gets complicated in a way most people have never considered. There are two main methods being used to create what is called a SNP profile. That is the DNA fingerprint they need to upload to genealogy databases and start identifying relatives. One method uses microarray technology, where the DNA is placed on a chip and roughly 700,000 genetic markers are read across the genome. The other uses whole genome sequencing, and right now, if a lab is relying exclusively on whole genome sequencing, they are in serious trouble when the sample is a mixture, because the tools to deconvolute using that platform are still lagging years behind. The field only started using this type of testing for forensic samples around 2018. That is not very long ago, and the software has not caught up. So here is what may actually be happening behind the scenes in the Nancy Guthrie case. The lab handling this evidence may be sitting with a mixture they cannot yet cleanly separate, and a separate team of bioinformatics scientists, people who work with raw genetic data the way others work with code, may be testing algorithm after algorithm right now, trying to pull one clean signal out of what could be 5 overlapping voices all talking at once. And here is the frightening part. If the perpetrator only contributes 10% of that mixture, getting a usable profile from that small a contribution may be near impossible, even with the best tools available today. Something just shifted in this case, and you need to hear what comes next. But here is what does give investigators hope. That house is not finished giving up its secrets. Even with the crime scene cleared, even with people going in and out, the call is being made by experts to go back, to return to Nancy's home and keep searching, because DNA is remarkably durable. Cases have been cracked using DNA collected decades after the fact. And if the person who took Nancy was inside that home for somewhere around 40 minutes, physics and biology make it nearly impossible that he left nothing behind. Think about the detail that keeps surfacing in this investigation. The bite flashlight, a tactical tool that officers and operatives bite down on to free up their hands in the dark. If that person had one of those in his mouth while moving through Nancy's house, he was producing saliva the entire time. When he leaned up toward that camera to disable it, physics says something dropped. Something landed on that surface below. And if he gave any verbal commands inside that home, he had to remove that light from his mouth. The moment he did, his DNA was right there on the outside of his gloves. Unless he changed those gloves more than once, something was left behind in that house. The question is not whether it is there, the question is whether they have found it yet. And now, there is another name emerging in this conversation that everyone following the Nancy Guthrie case should know. Astrea Forensics, a groundbreaking lab out of UC Santa Cruz. And the reason their name matters right now is something called rootless hair. For decades, forensic scientists said it plainly: a hair shaft with no root is useless. You might get mitochondrial DNA, the least useful type for individual identification, but nothing that could actually point to a specific person. Case after case after case went cold because of rootless hair sitting in an evidence bag with nowhere to go. Then a scientist named Dr. Ed Green changed everything. His team found a way to extract a SNP profile from the hair shaft itself, no root required. And that SNP profile can be uploaded into the same genealogy databases used to identify relatives and build a family tree that leads straight to the perpetrator. Hit that like button right now if this is blowing your mind, because honestly, it should be. And if you want to stay ahead of every development in this case, subscribe right now. This channel is not slowing down. Cases that had nothing but a broken strand of hair, no root, no other physical evidence. Cases that seemed hopeless, solved, because one scientist refused to accept that the answer was impossible. And that precedent matters enormously for what might still be inside Nancy Guthrie's home. Now here is where a name with enormous reach enters this picture. Savannah Guthrie, Nancy's daughter-in-law, a woman with a national platform, direct access to the highest levels of media and influence, and connections that reach into the White House. And the question being raised is this: what could someone like Savannah do to accelerate what is happening behind the scenes? One area where her influence could be decisive involves the biggest genealogy databases in the world, Ancestry.com, 23andMe. These platforms hold the DNA of over 54 million people. 54 million. If investigators had access to even a fraction of that, they could be solving violent crimes not just daily, but multiple times per day. The technology exists, the database exists, the need exists. But here is what most people following this case do not realize. Law enforcement cannot touch those databases, not without an extraordinary legal fight. These companies do not share their customer DNA with investigators. They release transparency reports. They protect their customers. And so far, all they have ever been forced to hand over is things like credit card records. Nothing genetic. The databases investigators can actually use? 3 of them: GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, and a newer one called the DNA Justice Database. Together, they hold fewer than 2 million profiles. 2 million versus 54 million. That is the wall standing between investigators and potentially identifying the person who walked into Nancy Guthrie's home. And the conversation being had right now is whether this case, given its visibility, given its emotional weight, given public pressure, could be the one that forces that wall to come down. Here is something that should stop you for a second. If the DNA found in Nancy's home had produced a clean profile and it had been uploaded to the available databases and something had hit, this case would very likely already be solved. We know this because of what happened with the glove. A glove found 2 miles from Nancy's home was traced, and a person was identified and eliminated as a suspect relatively quickly. That happened through genetic genealogy. That process worked fast when the sample was clean. The fact that weeks have passed and no major announcement has come is being read by experts as a signal. The clean profile may not exist yet, which brings everything back to that mixture, back to those scientists running algorithms around the clock, back to the question of whether the perpetrator's DNA is still sitting somewhere in that house, in a spot no one has swabbed yet. What would you do if you were Savannah Guthrie right now? What move would you make? Drop it in the comments because this is a conversation worth having. Now there is one more piece of this that deserves serious attention. Something that sounds like science fiction but is real and maybe closer than anyone expected. New equipment is being developed, not just software. Physical laboratory equipment designed to begin the separation process of mixed DNA samples from the very start of analysis, before the data ever reaches a bioinformatics scientist's screen. Right now, the process works like this. A lab runs the sample, produces raw data, and then a separate team of specialists tries to computationally untangle the mess after the fact. What is coming would begin doing that work at the molecular level, from the moment the sample is processed. That equipment is reportedly not ready yet. It was not expected until next year. But given the attention on this case, given what it would mean for any company to be the one that helped break it, the timeline may be accelerating. And here is the thought that is hard to shake. We could not have predicted 5 years ago that a rootless strand of hair would ever identify a killer. We could not have predicted that autosomal DNA would ever be usable for genealogy at the kind of depth that has now solved hundreds of cases. Every time the scientific community said something was impossible, someone in a lab somewhere refused to believe it. That same energy is pointed at this case right now. The vast majority of people in the United States are already identifiable through genetic genealogy databases, whether they have ever taken a DNA test themselves or not. Because a sibling tested, a cousin tested, and once enough relatives are in the system, you are already there by proxy. The perpetrator who walked into Nancy Guthrie's home may not know that, may have no idea that the net being cast right now extends far beyond what any single database holds. There is concerted, relentless effort happening behind the scenes. Scientists who do not take no for an answer. Investigators who are not giving up. Technology being rushed to meet a moment that the entire country is watching. And this case is far from over. If you have been watching from the beginning, if you have shared this story, if you have told someone about Nancy Guthrie who did not know her name, then you are part of keeping this case alive. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already, because there is more coming. There are details in this investigation that are still beneath the surface, and this channel is going to be the first place you hear them. One question before you go. Knowing what you know now about how these DNA databases work, and knowing that Ancestry.com holds 54 million profiles that law enforcement cannot access, do you think those companies should open their databases to help find Nancy? Tell me your answer in the comments right now, because cases like this one do not always reach the resolution we need. But sometimes one piece of evidence, one strand of hair, one overlooked swab from a corner of a room no one checked twice is the thing that breaks everything open. And somewhere out there, that piece may already exist. It just has not been found yet. And there is another case with a similar evidence problem that ended in a way nobody expected. That one is coming next.